It is a joint meeting of the Kingston Select Board as well as the Kingston Budget Committee that will be convening tonight, Wednesday, November 15th. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll just introduce initially the members of the Select Board. So I am Chris Bashaw. We have Electra Alessio, we have Glenn Koppelman, and we have Lori Swed. And we have our Selectmen's Administrator, Susan, and we have our Finance Director here, Paula Mahoney. Trish, do you want to introduce the members of the Budget Committee? Got to push your microphone and make it green.
So I'm Trish Tidd, Chairman of the Budget Committee, and other members. So this will start this way and go around. So Claudine. Anne-Marie. I'm sorry, Anne-Marie. It's been a long day. John. My name is John Renberg. Rick Russman. Pitterty. Kim Donahue. There we go. And Stacy Diaz.
Dion. That's it.
Diaz and Dion.
All right, thank you. So the main purpose of tonight's meeting is the town established a working group to do a salary wage study working group to bring back some information to both the Board of Selectmen as well as the Budget Committee. This was kind of a catalyst last year during the budget season. The Budget Committee had really stated that they were not satisfied with the current pay for performance implementation process for pay raises. They felt it was too subjective depending on who department heads may or may not be. And they just really didn't like the process. But they agreed to continue the budget last year with that process, and we agreed that we would form some type of group that could bring some documentation to where current pay salaries are in comparison to other municipalities in the public sector. So we have members of the working group here this evening we've had numerous meetings on this. I will tell you, it's like pulling teeth to get some of this information from other municipalities. We searched available databases, but they're not updated very regularly, including some of the information in NHMA, as well as some of the even we looked into collective bargaining agreements that are posted on the state's website. I knew of several collective bargaining agreements that I've either sat on the side of management or the unions at times, and some of those hadn't been updated in years either on the state's website. So there was a lot of reaching out to folks and begging for information. I can tell you one of the things I did bring here that I'll just pass around to members, and if anyone wants me to email them a copy of it, this is a professional comprehensive payroll matrix salary study. This costs you about 200 grand, at least over at the county. That's what it cost for us to get this. And there's all sorts of additional data that's factored into these numbers. It does everything from housing availability, real estate market results based off of geographically where you live. It adds and subtracts calculations based off of the fact of what the housing would be in Rockingham County, in particular Kingston. It does all those things. So I just wanted to pass around an example. I mean, this is a 100-page report. This was the final report, and this is already just a couple years old. And I can tell you, even after the county implemented this, they had multiple years of additional increases because they couldn't afford to implement essentially everything at once to get us to the percentile that they wanted to be, which was the 50th percentile on a lot of these job classifications. And it resulted in additional, sometimes double-digit pay increases for multiple years since this has been enacted. I believe the first year was an 8% increase on top of the implementation of this program at this rate. The year after that was a 10%, and then this year was a 6%. Trying to get employees up to where they needed to be to retain people in the current labor market. So I'll turn it over to Stacy for the next part of the presentation.
So as Chris said, we were formed with members of the Select Board, the Budget Committee, and departmental heads, and 2 people from the public to put this together. We had we were brought together to look at equity of pay scales and ensuring alignments with the surrounding towns. So the Matrix Task Force, Chris Bashaw, Ellie, Claudine, myself, Paula, Graham, Joel, and Kent Walker. We did have another person. We tried to get volunteers to sign up from the public. We had another public volunteer who subsequently resigned, and we had no other people who volunteered to be on this committee. So we moved forward as best as we could with the people we had so that we could get something within this budget cycle. Next slide. So we're going to go over what we did for the compensation analysis process. So this is pretty much standard from every compensation analysis project, and I have check marks on the parts that we've completed to date. We've done other areas. We've done some other departments have been done complete. Other departments we need to work on, and we'll talk about the difficulty of getting data particularly to what the job is. So we access salary and wage information internally. Next slide. So each department head was asked to fill out spreadsheets, which included salary, length of service, length in position, job titles, job qualifications, and job description. We made sure we got all of this information so that we could try to reach out to other towns to get the equivalent position. Just because you have a title of administrative assistant doesn't mean that that's an equivalent position even within the town or amongst other towns. So we wanted to make sure we were comparing the equivalent job to the equivalent job, which is part of when you go through doing this analysis. That's one of the big things they tell you to do so that you're getting the right salary. So as part of this, we broke it up to executive support staff, which includes the finance, HR director, human services, land use coordinator, the select board, assessing, permitting, town inspectors and engineers. That was kind of all the executive support staff. We had the town clerk, tax collector was one other department, police, the fire department, and the Department of Public Works. So one of the things that we came across when we were looking at all these positions was that a lot of our support staff may have one title, but they actually are doing more than one job. So if you look at the town clerk, it's the town clerk and tax collector. What we found is some of our local towns have a town clerk and a tax collector. So the equivalent position wasn't necessarily something that we could easily find and try to get that information. So we defined our job categories. We created grades. And so what we did was, and we're still working on these grades because it's difficult to take grades and implement them across the town. So we've initially, these are our, so we have an entry-level position, which is like no experience, like fresh out of high school, doesn't have any position. We have entry-level, which is some experience, so we're working on this terminology because it can be confusing. A mid-year is, mid-level, somebody who's got some experience or somebody who's gotten education or qualifications such as coming out of the police academy or the fire academy or has their EMT, and so that's where we're working on it and trying to relate to what has been done. Obviously, experienced people, department heads, and then we put a town manager / administrator because a lot of towns we're comparing to have this position. So department heads or other people have less responsibilities because there's a town manager or town administrator. So because we don't have one, sometimes that falls on our department heads, in between the department heads and the select board. So we're trying to show where we are amongst all the towns in the area. So we went and we collected data. So a lot of it is, what do we collect, how do we collect, who do we compare to? So towns were based on the proximity to Kingston, comparable size, and the labor market. So when you look at the Department of Labor and what labor market they put Kingston in, they put our labor market into the Haverhill, Newburyport, and Amesbury labor market. So the Department of Labor in New Hampshire doesn't put us into a labor market in New Hampshire, it puts us into the Haverhill, Newburyport, Amesbury, what they call the Mass New Hampshire line labor market. And so we are in Rockingham County. Rockingham County is also considered a subsidiary of Boston. So when you look at the labor market in this area, those are the labor markets that we are in. A lot of this kind of however you go is what we're comparing to, but this is what the information we got from the New Hampshire labor information. And so this is what is listed in the state and what the NHMA considers us in. So our next step is we performed the analysis. And so we got data from various towns as best as we could. Some towns we couldn't have comparable. And what we found was the police were in the 50th percentile. The fire department was in the 15th percentile. The Department of Public Works was in the 95th percentile. And the town hall we're still working on, just because the...
I don't want to interrupt. Percentile of what?
The range.
Range of what?
Pay range.
For who? What position?
All the positions in general.
So did you average, you elect, it's a little bit awkward to say, but did you, if there are 9 people working in the department, did you take all 9 people?
Nope.
So you have to turn on a microphone so it can be picked up.
So how we did this analysis is we went out and we got ranges of pay for all the positions, and we did the low and the highs from each of the towns. So the easiest example is a patrolman, and we got the lows and the highs from 30 different towns because we needed to get additional data, and we took the median of each position, and we compared our salary to the median that we found from the 21 towns or 30 towns, depending on. What we found is that not every position was in every town that we originally selected. So we allowed them to go into other towns to try to get that position as long as it met the criteria of being within the same proximity of Kingston. So we took the median, and then what we looked at was a range and said, where are we currently at for each position? And what we found overall was that the police were in the 50th percentile, and different positions are in different percentiles depending on what it is, but in general, the police were in the 50th percentile, the fire was in the 15th percentile, and the Department of Public Works was in the 95th percentile. We're having more difficulty with the town hall employees, because what happens is usually there's only one position doing that role. So we're not getting highs and lows from the town like we would get from some other departments. So we're getting one number, and what we found is town clerk, class collector. We got out of all the towns we called, we've gotten 2 numbers.
So for firefighters, you said you had the low, the high, and the median.
The low, we took the medium, low, and high.
So you had 3 numbers for firefighters.
Well, more than that, but yes. We took a low, we called the town, we got the low rate and the high rate that they were paying a firefighter.
Right. And then you took the median.
30 times.
Right.
Then we took the median of the lows and the median of the highs.
Did you take the median or the average?
The median.
So you got 3 numbers for each town.
Yeah. Yes, we have the median. And so the reason we took the median,
No, that's,
Yeah.
yep.
so we took the median. And so that is where we've kind of looked at this data and evaluated.
So if you're gonna take the median, which is a perfectly valid way of doing it, why did you bother to take the lows and the highs?
So depending on the position. So for some positions, there's multiple policemen that's called a patrolman, right? So there's a low, so there's 10 policemen in Epping, and so there's patrolmen, and there's a low, and there's a high in those rates, and they're all within that. So so they gave us the low and the high instead of a list of everyone's salary. And so we took the low and the high of those things to see where we were, and then we took the.
So how, when you had imperfect data, where did you get the median for that one where they wouldn't give you the individual numbers?
We took the median of all the towns, of all the lows and all the highs.
Thanks for being patient, thanks.
No, it's fine, so we're just putting it together. So, that is kind of where we are right now. So, go ahead. Yep, so we're working on developing a pay structure, and so police and fire have already developed their pay structure. Within the 6th grades, each grade has 7 steps. So within that pay structure, there's a role, and those grades are within that step. So if you are a patrolman A, you start at, the low is at this percentage, and you have 7 steps within that position. The recommendation from the committee that when we implement these matrices, that one has to keep up on the matrix, we would apply COLA to the matrix if the town approved it, so that the matrix would keep up with labor market demand, and we wouldn't have to play catch up the way we have over the last few years.
And we're talking about step grade system is, and I know that there's mixed reviews on it all over the place. But if you want to get away from a performance-based evaluation, which can be subjective, especially, we're not in the business of providing a service or a product that is for profit that we can say, oh, we've met these benchmarks to make X amount of dollars. Obviously more of my experience is the law enforcement side. Sometimes the absence of arrests is a result of proactive required you to arrest less people because you're mitigating crime that's happening. So if a town's arrest numbers go down, that doesn't mean they're doing less. That means they may be taking proactive measures that prevent crimes from happening. So what you've seen with a lot of collective bargaining agreements is that employees felt that there was no mechanism in place to progress through their current position. But we also understand that every position has a cap. If you just want to be a patrolman, you don't continue to get raises even though you decide to never get promoted or take on responsibilities. But we wanted a reasonable amount of time, and we felt that within a job field category, unless it's incredibly specialized that requires years of additional certifications and training and upkeep, that you should within 7 years, based off of what we've seen with other contracts and other municipalities. And then once you that, the only raises you would be eligible for are any approved cost of living raises. So that job has a top to keep up with the cost of living. If you want to increase, if you want to increase and move up to another category or pay or another grade, you either need to take on those supervisory roles, get promoted, move into those higher responsibility positions.
So these are our recommendations. So we're recommending that we implement the wage matrix for the police because they are pretty much already there with some of their contracts that they have written and how they've gone about it. They are they are where they need to be. We're looking at a 2-year plan for fire so that we would try to increase them to get to where they need to be over the next 2 years. We did quick calculations, and it's about $47,000 to get the fire department all the way to where they need to be within that 50th percentile range. And then we want to continue to analyze the remaining town positions to make sure that we are getting the numbers that we need. I think with police and fire, it was pretty easily able to, or not easily, but easier than any of the other positions to obtain comparable job descriptions, to put that together to get a good matrix and to have it have some statistical significance. But with some of the other departments, the numbers that we're getting, the positions that we're getting, we need to do a little more digging to try to sparse that out and to kind of come up with maybe a different method for some of these positions, because we're not finding the comparable position, and if we do, we're getting one number, and right, one number comparing it, and you're either higher or lower than that number, and we want to make sure that we're looking at it from a couple of different perspectives.
Where's DPW on this? Are you not going to implement that like you would for the, is that not a recommendation since they're already kind of there or above the median?
So that is a discussion that I've been working with Phil I let him know that his group is in the 95th percentile, and we are looking at the job descriptions and the positions to make sure we're getting alignment. I don't know if you want to speak to that. Because we have had some, it's difficult to get an exact position or have the information. So there is.
Let me jump in a little bit here. We were very clear of the situation in both the police and the fire. The police officers, through the efforts of Chief Johnson, we had the police officer competitively salaried and paid to surrounding communities. And with a 7-step matrix, we could progress accordingly. They can't move the grounds unless they get more training and so forth and so on. The fire, on the other hand, they're way underpaid. And so we're looking at $47,000 that we would need to bring that department to be competitively paid to surrounding communities. And we're looking at doing that in we're recommending that we do it in a 2-year process. The Department of Public Works, on the other hand, came in very high. And so the committee did not feel comfortable making any recommendations, but are letting this group make some choices and decisions accordingly. The town hall and the staff therein is definitely more complex. We really ran out of time, and I'm being right up front about it. We didn't have enough time we want to continue, I'm not saying we don't. But when you looked, and this was kind of my area, when you looked at different town halls, there's multiple clerks, multiple duties for each clerk. They're working with land use, they're working with human services. It might be the same position, and they're reporting in 3 different supervisors. So that's going to take some more time. We don't want to spend $200,000 in a wage matrix study, so we do need more time for the town hall. But the public works, I mean, that's a discussion for this group, to be very honest with you.
So follow up to that, for the for the fire, prior to implementing the wage matrix for the fire department, you want 2 years to increase their salaries, and then they would be in line, and we would implement the wage matrix for it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Okay.
And going forward, a matrix would necessitate COLAs, so that, so that each step would get 2, 3, 4, whatever the percentage determined by the board and the budget committee.
open it up for some public comment. Yeah.
We open it up.
Yeah.
No, he does. Okay, so, Ellen Faulkner, no one in particular. So for the fire department, so the 2-year plan, so is the recommendation at this point to put in the funding you would need for 1 year in the proposed operating budget? Is that what I know you haven't voted that yet, but is that the
The
proposal?
recommendation is the half of the 47, so 24,000 in year 1, now the 24,000 in year 2.
So I just wondered if perhaps you could think about, or the fire department could think about, maybe the public doesn't care if they wait 2 years, and you put in a warrant article for the other half of that. So you'd have 23,000 in the budget, and then a warrant article for another 23 to see if the town this year might say, no, we don't want to pay for it this year, but the town may not care that the fire department has to wait 2 years to come up to average. They may be willing to support doing it now. I just thought I'd throw, you don't have to answer. I just thought I'd throw it
And I will say, discussions had been, we wanted it to be, until we presented the data to both the boards to digest it, have some information. You know, it may be a decision not to just blanket, it may be a decision that, hey, we want to put it where, you know, if budget committee decides that, yes, going forward, we don't like the paper performance and this is a good alternative, we may do the town budget and then do this whole pay matrix with the increases as a warrant article itself. I don't think we've just figured out how. I think we wanted a collaborative effort of what people's pulse is if they want to pursue any of this and how they want to pursue it.
We're not required to put the pay matrix on a warrant article.
Okay.
And a large amount of monies we would want to. My only concern about even putting year 2 in a warrant article is, let's say the voters say no, does that preclude us from being able to do it the following year?
And that, so I think you know, we're definitely open to some options, but I think you know, we're going to dive further into this. Paula has the examples from each of the departments that we have, because let's face it, there are going to be some positions that are much higher than the 50th percentile individually. So it's not just, hey, the whole department's going to get a big raise. It's going to be individually positioned to bring appropriate positions that are underpaid to where they need to be, not just a blanket raise for a department, even though some people are at the higher percentile, some are at the lower.
So, 2 things. I have it on. So, even though legally you wouldn't be precluded if the voters voted down the second year on a warrant article, you are putting elected people in an awkward position to come back a year later and fund something the voters have said no to. So legally you'd be all right, but ask yourself whether you want to teach you in law school. Don't ask questions you don't want to hear the answer to. If they say no, you're in an awkward position to come back later and put the money in. The second thing is there's obviously a lot of work and detail and calculations have gone into this, and I don't need to see that study. It doesn't even apply.
It doesn't apply to here. I
Right.
want people to have an idea of what goes into it.
But I would like to see the backup for this, because I got a lot of questions, but I don't want to waste time going down.
So it's let's dive. I mean, we have some of the backup support, but we also have full supporting data of how we got to these spreadsheets as well.
Is it all in a comprehensive?
They're separated. So the fire department is separate, the police is separate, and DPW is all separate spreadsheets.
Okay.
And
Some of the town hall data has also been collected but not tabulated. So we have a spreadsheet on that as well.
But you're not suggesting anything or made any
No,
comprehensive.
because we're not finished with that.
Right,
Yeah.
so what's involved, how many pages are involved in each of those 3 things? Yeah, I'd just like to look at it, that's all.
yeah, they're just, yes, we can definitely do that, for the 2 departments, have it all the way out.
But there is one thing that might be of interest to people. So when you said that the state of New Hampshire, and I understand exactly why it would be, that considers this part of the state, lumps it in with northeastern Essex County and Middlesex County. But when you, so that's the cost of housing, everything else. But when you were looking at what to pay people, were you looking at cities and towns in Massachusetts?
We did look at one. We looked at Merrimack. So we looked at Merrimack because we tried to look at the number of people in the town, of the services of the town, and tried to keep it kind of together. But the rest of our towns were within New Hampshire.
So, which is fine.
To answer your question, John.
Yes.
Only one Massachusetts town was considered, the rest were all southern New Hampshire.
And part of the reason for that is when you start trying to then compare retirement systems and
Right.
the benefits, that it gets very skewed. And I can tell you, the numbers would be even lower if we included all the neighboring mass communities.
I know that as well as anyone. But the big thing is, particularly with firefighters, is the difference in the labor environment. So you can't compare them in that manner. I think on housing and other costs, it's completely appropriate to look at it, but, and that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, and the big reason, so we want to, if people want to go through some of those slides tonight, we can, and then if they want to get it emailed and digest it, we wanted to make sure we had this meeting early because obviously the budget season is in full swing if anyone's gonna make recommendations and discussions. Initially, our first meeting to even present this wasn't for another few weeks, and if there's any other data, either of the board says, hey, could you try to get this for us? Could you try to pick this out? We wanted to have some flexibility. Okay, is there something else you think you need to make an informed decision from where we're at? And one of the things I can tell you from watching 5 years ago, nobody would have seen the labor market that we're involved in coming down. At least I didn't. I absolutely didn't, especially at a municipal level. Previously it was always, municipal positions were always kind of coveted because they're stable, they were resilient to, recessions and those type of things. But how many people in this room are under 40 years old? So we don't have a single person in this room that represents the majority of the current labor market, which is we got one in the booth. So we have one person that actually represents the majority of the current labor market. And there are different things. When we see, we set the tax rate today, but when we saw the increases in the home assessments, I sit there and I worry for my 3 children that they may never know what it's like to own a single family home in a community because I don't know if they'll ever be able to afford to do it. I assume they're just going to wait till I die and take over my house. Yeah, or the barn. And we're looking at these things that we've never seen. So part of the labor market, those that actually have, and same with, there are people that want to go get their own apartment, but they can't. So now they're living at home. So you're divided. You have people that are paying much more for things than we were previously. So the bottom thing for them is all they care about is what is in my paycheck. And then you have this other generation that has consumed the market where they're concerned with finances, but they want 4-day work weeks. They want remote work. They want, all this additional paid time off. They want paternity leave, maternity leave, all these other things that are different benefits. And let's face it, those folks can't plow driveways from home on their computer. The police department can't, respond to crimes from remote working. The town hall cannot operate remotely. And there have to be physical people there and a place for us to go. So there's a lot of these benefits that are happening in the private sector that are stealing labor market from us that we just can't offer certain benefits that this labor market is looking for. Over at the county, we're offering, police, obviously, I'm always going to divert to law enforcement because it's what I know. There are towns in the state that have been offering $5,000, $10,000, and $20,000 sign-on bonuses for full-time certified employees. Municipalities are just poaching employees from each other. They have no shame about it right now because they're all desperate. Right next door, we have a community in Newton. They currently have an interim town manager provided by MRI at a much higher cost than I guarantee what they were paying their town manager. They have an interim police chief right now that's left, and they have an interim finance director over there that are all being paid by a private company to come in and fill these roles. Because from what I've been told, it was a culture of people not passing appropriate budgets and they didn't feel that they could provide for their employees in the service and they were just sick of it, so they up and quit. I don't want us to be one of those communities. I definitely value the employees in this town. I think it's important. I get it. It's a cost of doing business. Like I said earlier, we don't make a product. We don't sell a service for it. We're not a for-profit or even like a flatline cover our cost nonprofit entity. We try to minimize the amount of money we hemorrhage while providing the level of service that the taxpayers have said that they expect. And the reality is, with all this inflation, you know, when you look at the inflation index numbers, that's not, you know, that's a nationwide thing based on a bunch of different calculations. But if you look at the cumulative inflation rates, I mean, there are some products that we're paying over the past 5 years that have gone up 100, 200, 300% in certain items, and a lot of that is affected, whether it be paving materials, whether it be fuel for the vehicles that we have, anything steel related, plows, maintenance, auto parts, all these other things to keep our town going. Computer services have gone up. With it, you're going to see in the budget presentation we have coming on Sunday, contracted services through our IT professionals. All these services are going up because cyber criminals have found that towns are a great target. So if they can get, you know, if they can infiltrate your system and lock you out of your server, you're paying them ransoms to unlock the data that you have on all the townspeople so you can function. So everything we're doing as a town costs more money, and it's much more labor intensive. And, you know, it's tough. To even remotely think of keeping in with the traditional terms of inflation, everybody always was kind of comfortable with, like, if you could keep it at 2.5%, people could always seem to live with that. We've just hit this problem where the town had to catch up from some budgeting issues that weren't properly budgeted for decades and now need to be caught up. And we were always kind of at the bottom of the labor market, but it hadn't really affected us yet. But people are willing to jump ship, go to another town for 50 cents, $1 an hour, and they'll do it multiple times over the course of a couple of years, because there's also no sense of loyalty in a lot of job professions now, where they want to spend an entire career at one agency, one municipality, one private sector business. They'll jump around for the raises and play everything against each other. So that's kind of my final speech on that. And I can tell you, I know a lot of people already know this. Anything that I'm presenting to you, either tonight through the budget committee, I'm not running for re-election, so anything that I have to do, I'm not doing it because I want people to like me or get re-elected. I'm gonna present to you with what I think is appropriate, and we're gonna have to make some hard decisions, unfortunately. Ellen?
One of the reasons why I came tonight was actually to find out not how you're presenting it to this board, but how's it going forward? Because I understand not contracts, so Paul is right that you don't need to put something that's not a contract before the public. But if this is something that someone feels they've been promised and it's they're obligating future funds, that does have to go before the public. I know you've talked to that, has to go before the public.
I think if we're going to implement a pay matrix study that guarantees especially step raises, I think we have to have it voted on by the townspeople.
And the other thing I was going to say is, without that, the next Board of Selectmen can get rid of it.
Yeah.
If it's just something you guys adopt that the town hasn't voted, the next Board of Selectmen may be like, yeah, I'm not doing this, I'm not seeing the budget go up, and they could just ignore it completely.
I just don't understand how the NHMA could view that, but we can't enter into an IT contract as a multi-year contract because it's a debt obligation.
And I'm not saying that
without
it's
an escape clause.
that legally you might have, but if you want to have any teeth to it and have the employee that this is going to be something that is a policy that has been voted on by the town and therefore a policy, I'm just saying.
You're right, and because you're right, when you get hired, if all of a sudden 5 years later you were due to be at a certain point, and that's what, because these are the terms conditions that I signed up under, you expect them to be there. I can speak very fluently to this. I am one of the people in the semi-grandfathered state retirement system where I was promised a certain thing when I started my job, and they said, you don't have a choice, you have to participate in the retirement system. This percentage of your check goes to it every week. And 7 years later, they said, hey, yeah, guess what?
Kidding.
That thing we said you had to do and you had no choice, we're changing the terms of it.
That's all I'm saying.
But the judges voted on theirs, and they said theirs is a contract.
You know, a Board of Selectmen 3 years from now may be like, yeah, we didn't vote this, no one else did, we don't like it. So I'm just saying, for the employees, if this is really to give employees an idea of stability, you might need to have a vote.
Yeah.
Or it might be better, part of valor. And the only other thing I want to say, which is not really how I usually do things, but maybe we want to be better than half. We have one department that's 95%, maybe we should think about.
I absolutely think the goal is, I think the lowest you want to be, but we have to be cognizant of what the town and what us as putting forward budgets are willing to put to get us there. But it is a great starting point. Like I said, the county, that was the first step. They actually, the first step was getting everyone to the 35th percentile. And then they had some individual departments that still had to move in job classifications, and then sweeping raises on top of that. And then the goal was to get it to the 50th percentile. But then they found there's certain jobs that, unless you're at the 90th percentile, they're not coming to work here. And so they couldn't, the nurses weren't getting hired at the rates they were at, so they had to focus on that one because they weren't filling vacancies. Do folks want to see the individual department slides that we have at least now, and then we're more than willing to send that out, or?
Graham Pellerin, Fire Chief. So I was on the committee. Two things that I just want to bring up is, one, while you guys either get this in an email or we review it tonight about the towns that we've done. So I use some other towns as well, and I don't know if the police chief did it or not. So I use Manchester, Portsmouth as well, because yes, their population may be different and higher than ours, but I'm losing people. I had a guy quit here 4 months ago and he went to Manchester for less money. So it's a problem, like Select Board Member Bashaw said, it's a problem all around. The other thing I want you to keep in mind, because this probably affects my department more than most, so between myself and the police department, right now I have a full-time member on and a per diem member. Joel, I believe, has 2 members on right now. They're probably not lieutenants, right? They're not officers. They haven't been trained to make instantaneous decisions on life safety like I have, but they're expected to in this setting. So my full-time member right now, if he gets called to 125 for head-on collision, he's in the hot seat. He needs to make the decision to call for med flight if I don't show up, or another officer that's on the call department doesn't show up. If he goes to a reported structure fire, he needs to make the call when he gets on scene, whether to call a first alarm, whether nobody goes in to save, whoever's in the building. So I'm not only comparing firefighters to firefighters, but I'm actually comparing my firefighters to officers in other departments. So just keep that in mind if you would. Thank you.
So just let me ask you a question. You said an officer left and went to Manchester for less money? Is that, did you say that?
Yes.
So how would this help that problem?
Well, he left for less money starting, but he'll end up making more money within 2 years.
Oh, that's important because
That is a definitely good
Yeah,
clarifying point to make. Because I was kind of confused why you would bring that up.
He had 4 years on this department, just got a decent sized raise last year, and then left for less money, but guaranteed to make more money after 2 years. Sorry, I left that out.
So personally, I am a devil in the details. I would like to understand more, because this isn't giving me enough to have an honest opinion on it. I know a lot of work went into it, and kudos to the team. It's just, I'm not at the granular level I need to really understand it, to be honest with you.
right, exactly.
Right, I mean, there's a lot to digest. I mean, and as I said, we had to let something go, and we let the town hall, we stopped because we wanted to get the 3 major departments completed. That was the intent, for starters, and we hope to finish that out.
I guess for next steps are both the boards' purview that they would like this, obviously email them to me immediately to all the board members to review, but I would like to just leave it as an open conversation. If we could make, we'll have Paula send it out to everyone, just to avoid boards communicating and turning into 91A issues. If you are going to respond back, if there's a piece of data that you would specifically like that board to try and get you or present you or clarify prior to the next joint meeting, if you could individually and not reply all to Paula and maybe make the request through her, and she will bring it to the committee to bring that information forward.
Suggestion, when you send it out, Paula, if you put the recipients in the blind copy, then if someone happens to hit reply all, it's only going to go to you anyway.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Are you gonna bring up one? Yeah. So we can see it?
So we will bring up at least one slide so we can kind of explain the data that's on there that you're going to be looking at and the information that you get.
Yeah,
Yep.
this is just the fire department, so.
Microphone.
I forgot. So we didn't put like entry level or anything like that for this, but we have their actual positions, and then we have the 7 steps. So this would be an entry level, correct? So if they just got out, or even if they didn't go to the academy yet, is that what can you help me explain this?
We need to keep
Can I just chime in, as you're explaining it, is each step outlined somewhere that we could understand in depth what's the qualification for each?
So the way I did it was I mimicked the town of Bow, New Hampshire. So it's similar in size, similar in staffing for at least the fire department. I don't know about other departments. So what they did is they actually had every town position listed on their matrix. Everybody from like a highway laborer at $18 an hour to start, all the way down to the 3 department heads and the town admin at the highest grade level on the left.
But the steps are an annual increase as long as you have a satisfactory performance evaluation that you are meeting the standards of your job. In particular with Graham's, they would move through the different job classifications on the left as they attain certain qualifications. So an EMTB has less qualifications than an EMTA. So, but the steps are, if you were in your job and you're meeting the qualifications of your job, you're eligible for seven raises until you max out essentially the classification of that job. If you want to move into another pay grade that you can then move through those steps, then you're going to have to get additional certifications, and there could be lateral movement within there based on baseline certifications that may qualify for experience levels.
So these are guaranteed increases for, let's pretend 7 years, 7 steps.
Not guaranteed,
Well,
not guaranteed.
if you're performing your job
If you are doing what you're supposed to be doing and your department feels that you are ready to move up. So like if you have somebody who is doing minimum of their job, they may not move up a step. It may be a chosen.
But correct.
Right.
But if you are not meeting the standards that are set forth in exception, and one of the things that I could tell you, I'm not a big believer in performance evaluations, very expansive performance evaluations, because those themselves can be very subjective. And if you if you wait till the end of the year to correct your employees, you're not doing your job as a supervisor or a leader at any level. Quite frankly, if you get to the end of the year, if you get to the point where you have to say this person is not satisfactorily meeting the performance of their job, at that point they should probably be on a performance improvement plan, or you should be working on the documentation and recommending to them that they update their resume, because an opportunity may await them outside of this town at any moment.
But how do you remove that subjectivity from this process?
Well, that's why you would just have you have a set of parameters that you're expected to meet, like attending all the training, no tardiness issues, showing up to work, these things, and so that constitutes a satisfactory performance. Each job is going to be a little bit different based off of what those parameters are.
And will that be within the scope of this committee, the matrix committee to
I think
decide?
you're going to still have because some departments and different jobs are so different. It's really going to be reliant on the department head to bring those, but I think they need to be reviewed, documented, and filed with the select board and the human resources department. So there's no, I'm just gonna change, I'm the department head, I'm gonna just kind of change this requirement on the fly before we get to evaluation season, because I just don't feel like being the bad guy.
So the department head does that, and if somebody wants to appeal that, what's their appeal right?
The appeal process would be to Human Resources and the Board of Selectmen.
So like Chris said earlier, a lot of people here may be in the private sector, where if you made a sales goal, then you're gonna get a raise, right? It's hard, firm numbers of sales of, how many lawnmowers you can fix in a month, whatever your business may be. In the municipality, because we're not for profit, it's tough to assign an exact goal for everybody to meet. When I do a performance review, I set individual goals for my people. Take another EMT class, take an officer class, because I think someday you may be an officer, take another firefighter class, whatever the case may be. Mostly mine is based on training, but it's tough to have zero opinion biased as a department head for your municipal employees.
The other thing to consider as well is that even though we have 7 steps there, if we don't give COLAs to those steps annually, the disparities will resume again, eventually. It might take 10 years, but you're gonna have to put 2-3% every year into each of those steps so that you keep up with inflation and with being competitive with other communities.
So these are the recommendations of what of what would be desirable.
Correct.
What I'm interested in looking at is the data and the crunching of the numbers.
So there's all these tabs along the bottom. So if
Yes.
you want to open one of those. Go open the firefighter one.
Okay. So that data exists for okay. Yeah, you understand the question
What you
I'm
were getting
asking.
at that you won.
Yeah, you understand what I'm asking, and it's there. Thank you.
We have,
Pardon me?
we have that for all the positions. Some of
Yeah.
it's easier to send to you than others. So some of them we're still working on to put together a comprehensive package.
I'll be honest with you. If you're not done, I only want to look at the 3 that you want to move on. I don't want to go look at what you're in the middle of doing for this other complicated stuff.
So
I'm not-
it would only be police and fire. Those are our only 2 recommendations at this time.
What about DPW?
We did not make a recommendation on DPW.
Do you,
We kind of wanted
how did,
it.
how did you get to the 95%?
We have the data.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Huh?
Yeah, I was going to say, I know you want to see the.
Yeah, I want to see the data, because I think, you know what, I'll tell you in advance, that data on DPW is going to inform my judgment and evaluation of the other data.
We have the data on those 3, that's what we focused on. The town hall needs to go till next year.
That's fine. No, that,
Graham, I have a question. So were your numbers, that first one, were those the aspirational numbers that you want to get to?
Of the colored spread, yes.
Yes, so that's what, in 2 years, that's what you want to implement.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So right now,
plus COLAs.
Well, no, I understand the COLA part, but this is the base pay matrix.
Can you,
that
do you
wanna-
mind going back though, the slide, like the firefighter slide of the 11 towns or whatever it was? Where is the median?
so this, I'm going to tell you that this is not the correct sheet that I sent to you as the latest. Before I knew how to do a formula for
That's
median.
okay. No, I know what you mean,
that
the spreadsheet, the Excel
Paul,
sheet, yeah, I know.
So let's just make sure we verify and send out the correct one.
Yes. So just I guess a point of reference. So right now, my full-time, I have 3 firefighters right now that make $22 an hour. So, and I talked to the budget committee about it before, that's a minimal price in my eyes, to ask somebody to run into a burning building, to, thump on a chest for somebody doing CPR, any of that stuff. And like I said before, to make that decision whether they need additional resources, whether they're gonna send their men into danger in a burning building or not, they're kind of operating at a higher level than they're being compensated for, even at the $26 an hour. I can't make everybody a captain on the fire department, but I feel they should be compensated, fairly. So I guess this is it.
Let me go back to my question, because it's what and I regretted doing it, but I didn't regret it after I did it. I didn't want to do it, but when I interrupted, because you have the bottom number, you have the top number, and then you mentioned the median number, which I found interesting. So where is the median number?
So that's the median low and the medium high.
No, median, M-E-D-I-A-N, and it wasn't you that made the representation, Chief. So
We did the median of the low and the median of the high. So what we did from the towns is we got the low, because there could be 10 people. So we got the low and the high from each town.
But did you do the median of the average? Like, you have an average line there as well.
No, the average is what I did
Average
before
is an
requested
average
for the
and
median.
The median is the median.
I understand
Yep.
that, I understand that. So I think I'm following your question. So that's an overall median.
Correct.
No,
For some reason,
no,
I thought
please,
we-
this
I
is
thought we had a
important.
median of each town.
You have the low pay for each town. You have the high pay for each town. Let me ask this, what do you think a median number is? When you say median, what do you mean to me?
What I mean is 50% above, 50% below.
No.
That
Okay,
is
I'm not, well, that isn't what it means to me, so now that's an average.
No, an average can be swayed. An average is a calculation of that every number is taken. A median is 50% above and 50% below. The reason we take a median instead of an average is because if we have an average, you can have a high number and a low number, and it can sway your average. But a median gives you the 50% above and the 50% below. So when we were getting the information, when we were going to the departments,
Yeah.
we were getting a high and a low from each department.
Okay, so Rick did this for me, and I wouldn't have done this. But, so the median is the value in the middle of a data set.
Yeah.
So you have 11 cities and towns there.
But that's exactly,
So please let me finish, because this is what I think a median is, and this is what the dictionary says. So you take the lowest town in column D, you take the highest town in column D, and then you go to the 6th town, which is halfway between 1 and 11. That's the median. The median data set is the one in the middle, the 6th town in each data set. It's not an average.
I agree with you, I think we're saying the same thing.
That's what,
Yeah, so the median,
It's a formula.
it's a formula.
So I think, are you actually referring to the mean?
no, median, no. So I don't know, I can't go through it, but what you take the lowest town between 10 and 23, and then you would, so that's 12, right, numbers, and you'd go to the one right in the middle, the town in the middle, so it could be a very distorted number. So you start with 14, and then you'd,
Maybe you should look at the data and then come back and ask more questions.
thank you, yeah, I will.
Paula, could you click in line 27D for me?
I think you're right, I think that formula
It's wrong.
actually calculates the mean, not a median.
Right,
Could you click one
maybe,
line?
I don't know what that,
Why is the formula D23 through D24 versus D3? What's the top line?
Just for this town, so this is D23. So, in D23.
The formula's not right, I don't think.
No, yeah, that's not. So the median, how the average and the median for each set of data is different.
yes.
The average is the average taken, all the numbers divided by, you add them up, divide it by the total numbers.
Right.
The median, we used Excel to give us the median, and what you're saying is you go into the middle and you sort them and you go into the middle and that's the number. That's exactly what the median is. So 50% above, 50% below. So that's exactly.
Yeah, that isn't what the median is, but that's all right. At
Could
least
we
I know what
graph
that
it?
number is.
I think if we graphed it, it would solve the issue. It would be a visual, and everyone could see exactly the midpoint. That's your best bet.
Yeah.
Graph it.
How does this sound? To find the mean, add up the values in a data set, and then divide by the number of values that you added. That's called,
That's a mean, but that's not what we used.
Okay.
We use the median.
Well,
And the
a citizen made a suggestion that I look at the details and figure it out.
Yep.
So I will.
Let's just confirm some of that so we can make, right before you send that out, we just need to make sure that any calculations are correct, because I think that formula was only for that one box. Yeah, so we gotta, yeah, you gotta make sure we're sending out the most up-to-date one and clarify any data that's putting out in it. Any more input?
So just to understand next steps, the committee will share the data, we'll review it, and then we'll have another meeting so that we have an opportunity to ask questions? Okay. Great. I think we all need some time to digest it.
I think it's clear. A lot of work went into this, and I thank you. I think the committee thanks this was not nothing. You guys did a lot of work here, and you can see it that you did. So thank you for doing that.
I have an editorial comment to make, not to be in any way considered a criticism, because I know how much work it takes to do this. It's an awful, awful lot. And I know the town over the last 6 years at least has been trying to come up with something to bring everybody in line and all that kind of stuff. I would like to hope, and this is editorial, having been a former employee that worked in the town hall, that maybe next time that could be considered one of the top ones to do, instead of always the one that drags up from behind. I understand they're important departments, but that one always seems to not quite get taken care of. So it's my editor, Susan would be happy.
So I'd just like to add that I appreciate all the work that's gone into this as well. I think as a board, one of our concerns was that there were a number of people who maybe weren't being paid fairly. Some departments that were going up a little faster than others. But having data to back up when we present the budget, when we are looking at the actual numbers through the budget process, that helps us a lot to be able to have actual reasons for why things need to go up or down within the budget. So having the data to back up just someone saying, well, we're not in line with other towns. Now we have the data showing, our fire department is vastly underpaid. So we need to work on that.
I do have one more question around time and grade, because we referenced somewhere about experience and how many years someone was in a role. How or if that was taken into account? Because I'm basing it like on...
Some of the data, like we said, was very difficult, and we said, yes, ideally, because when I've done the studies for police departments, whether it's for detail rates or pay, I want to know years of service or years in that current position. And the amount of information we were trying to elicit, and we were hitting some roadblocks, it was kind of that mentality. I told people, I said, don't let perfect get in the way of possible. We promised them we would bring them something, and we understand it is absolutely not perfect, and it's not going to encompass everything that we have, but we wanted to bring something to the table.
Okay. Where I'm going with that question is, if someone's in the job 10 years and someone's in the job 5 and have the exact same certifications and the exact same skill set and perform the job exactly the same way, I wouldn't want to just pay someone more money because they've been doing it longer. So are you saying that?
And that's why with the steps, there is something to be said, though, even though you have but you may not have the same experience dealing with those situations. That other employee with a longer tenure. A lot of these jobs, I mean, I hate to leave the town hall, but the three major departments, there's something to be said, a police officer that's been on for 3 years versus 7 years, they've seen a lot more. They may have the same exact certifications, training, and official training through New Hampshire Police Standards of Training and all that, but the experience they've developed just from going to additional call for services, firefighters, public works people, the more holes you're digging in town and running that equipment and you know where everything is, there's a value to that institutional knowledge, but we'd also want to recognize that, yes, a job does cap out somewhere.
How does that work, though? Let's say your 10-year employee doesn't do as good of a job as your 7-year employee, but one makes more than the other, and it's based just on how long they've been in the role. How does that factor in?
You're going to encounter that everywhere. And you're right, it does happen, but if they're not performing, you may have somebody that is just a high performer, but unless you want to create reward incentive instructions for performance, which performance-based evaluations with subjective raises that were given to people was what the budget committee seemed to not want, because they felt there was too much subjectiveness. So there needs to be a standard. You're meeting the standards of your job. Hey, but if you're a high performer, you can be recognized, and there's things that the town can look at in the future. But you can't essentially say, well, just because this guy's outperforming you or this gal's outperforming you, but you're still doing what's expected of you of your job, that you're now worth less money.
So you'll move through the steps the same way, as long as you have a minimal
correct for the, yeah.
performance. Okay.
No?
I'll be really quick. I do want to just put some context on this. We are in the 95th percentile in the public works, and that was based not on the mean, the average, the median, or anything like that. We were advertising for over 4 months, 2 positions for entry level at, I believe it was $22.50, and we got 3 applicants, none of whom were qualified. So we had to, this was last summer, and we had to bring that up. And then obviously when you do something like that and you have people who are 25-year veterans, we have the longest serving employee in the town in our department. You can't sit there and say, well, I know you've been here that much longer than them, and that's why you make $2 more an hour than this guy we just hired last week and doesn't even know where Main Street is. So I did want to provide some context on that. Additionally, all of our drivers, everybody drives in our department. They plow, and they all have at least 2 decades of experience of commercial driving experience. The commercial driver market right now, you can go make $25 an hour working for Amazon with no commercial driver's license, and you can smoke all the weed you want because you don't have a drug test you have to get randomly subjected to, like our employees are the only ones in the town that are subject to that. So I do want to provide some context on that, because when you have someone driving a massive wing plow down the road, you want someone with experience who can stop when they need to stop and not hit someone. And
I will was that the public works director came to us with, and some substantial pay increases, is he is directly competing with the private sector. He has private sector heavy equipment companies that are offering some of his certified employees, if you come start with us tomorrow, we'll give you $55 an hour.
$67 an hour is, someone can go to Haverhill right now and make $67 an hour to operate an excavator, and that's the low end.
But they gotta go to Haverhill.
It ain't that far. It's extra 2 miles.
So, Phil does have a unique thing where he is directly competing with the private sector. Obviously, the police department doesn't have a private sector comparison unless there's a dictatorship somewhere that I know that puts out their pay scales.
And it's I just want to put a plug in for my guys and say they also bring a lot of additional skills to the table. We have people with hazmat experience, welding, fabricating, on top of being drivers and equipment operators and everything like that. And I would just say that that's how we were able to do a lot of the projects we did this year, is tapping into these skills that our employees have, putting roofs on, installing playground equipment and things like that. So there's additional savings to the town beyond the, on the bottom line. We're not paying an outside contractor to come in and do this work. Our organic forces are able to perform these jobs, so.
Phil, I don't have your budget handy. Are you submitting for COLA for these folks this year?
Yes,
COLA straight across the town.
yep.
But I guess the question is, does it have to be? I mean, if they're in the 95%, you know, it's something to think about. If we just adjusted them to get them there, should they be getting COLA on top of everything else?
That's a good question.
But I do think to Phil's point and to what I said, he's one that comparatively, yes, you're comparing salaries of other municipalities, but he does have to compete with the private sector, and those people still can leave for substantial raises immediately.
That's always going to be the case, though. I mean, that's not going to change.
Okay, if there's nothing else, yeah, we'll sign. Are you?
That is the police data, but we'll send the fire and police.
Is the budget committee comfortable adjourning the meeting? Okay, well then we are adjourned.